Podcast, the show where we dive deep into the topics that directly impact the evolving originator. I'm your host, Connor Bartley. Bam! And joining me today is someone who doesn't just talk about success, she builds it. Now, let's see. We've got founder of the Catalyst coaching community, empowering loan officers across the country to scale their business and get their lives back. Host of her own podcast, The Mortgage Rainmaker. I highly suggest you go take a listen. And leads a team that since 2009 has helped more than 6,000 families and closed over $1.5 billion in loans and counting. She's a true industry firebrand, and so happy that she's here with me today. Shayla Gifford, welcome to the Lowdown.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a pleasure. I mean, Shayla, first of all, thank you for being on the show. Excited to have you here. There have been a number of guests who've joined the Lowdown that you've had incredible influence on and have inspired them to do great things in their businesses. So it's kind of a full circle moment to have you here. But I just want to jump right into it, okay? Because I don't like to waste time.
Sure.
You've had a massive mortgage career, I would say industry icon, and continue to impact careers and lives all over the place. When you got started, was that always the plan?
No, you don't know what you don't know. And I got started in Reno, Nevada at the age of 23. And my first goal was to just survive and get good at this. Then the second goal became to make six figures. And then the third goal was to make more money than my dad. And then once I'd kind of been the top of my little small pond, I'd been in the industry for 6 years. I think I was doing about $30 to $40 million in business. I was working 12 to 15 hours a day at times. I knew that this wasn't sustainable, but I thought that's what the industry required. The amount of stress and pressure. I didn't have any version of like what it meant to build a team or how to build systems and processes. I was just really good at hustle and scramble. And I've got an insane work ethic and I'm really scared of failure. So it wasn't until I got out of my small town in Reno, I went to my first coaching conference in the mortgage business and I met Josh Sigmund and he earned $1 million a year. And he's about 2 years older than I am. And I'm, 28 at the time, just got married. And it pissed me off, Connor. I was like, what do you mean? How do you earn triple the income that I am earning? There's no way you're 3 times harder worker. There's no way that you're 3 times smarter or more talented or a better technician than I am. Yes, you live in a much bigger city than I live in, but there's just no way. And so that opened my eyes to the next goal, which was to copy Josh and figure out how to make $1 million because why not? If someone else could do it, why not me? And then my goals continued to evolve after that, right? Then it became beat Josh, and then it became help other people get to the top of their financial mountain. And I became a coach and helped a lot of other people become $50 to $100 million producers and stack cash. And I've helped now 5 people get to retirement, including my original LOA after 12 years. And I'm going for 12. I want to know, there's I've got many more, but I want to get 12 people that I took all the way through to retirement. I just think that's a hallmark of a career. But my desires have grown and expanded a lot over the 22 years I've been in the business.
You have the Shayla Gifford retirement community, population 12 and counting, I'm sure. Well, that's phenomenal. One, I love, so I'm just going to call this out. You're making more money than your dad 6 years into a new job, right? Like that's pretty cool. And I love that you just continue to find ways to give back. The competitive nature of learning, what Josh was doing and saying, you can't beat me. I'm going to find that tells me a lot about who you are as a person. But I want to go back just to the beginning because there's always a moment in a loan officer's career where they don't have a track record. There's no credibility. And that's where a lot of imposter syndrome lives. That's where a lot of insecurity lives. And we talk about this sometimes on the show. What was the first thing that you did to make people start to really take you seriously?
Always answer the phone, always tell the truth. Make promises that I knew I could keep. I'm just not one that's ever going to overpromise and underdeliver. I'm definitely really eager and people can feel that. I have no problem bringing my intensity out and speaking from the heart. But, from the beginning, I had a lot of faith and belief in myself. I like calculus, stats, physics. I'm just a girl that's a nerd for the numbers. And I had spent 4 years in direct marketing sales before getting into the mortgage business. So I knew a lot about hard work and playing the numbers game and dealing with rejection. So, I just went for it. I had no other choice. I'm 23 with no college degree. My direct sales business left me basically broke, at $1,000 to my name. And so I didn't really think like, am I good enough? Am I too young? I just didn't allow those thoughts. Those thoughts do not serve you. I just was like, how can I get better every day? Who can I call? Who can I talk to? Where's the opportunity? And I just stayed leaned into that. And it's amazing that whatever you focus on expands. And so if you focus on your inadequacy and you focus on your inexperience and you focus on your shortcomings, you're just going to wallow in that. So I just am pretty good with mental conditioning and just thinking about what's going to serve me and what I most want. And, we don't have a luxury of having a lack thought when you're broke, you got to go and you got to
go.
You got to use the tools and the assets that you have at the time. And in the beginning, when you don't have any business, you've got all the time in the world. So you got to show up at open houses and you've got to hustle and try to make sales face to face. And you got to go to the home shows and the wedding shows and the, networking events everywhere. You just got to hustle. And then you get better and better at the conversations and the presentations and the cold calls or whatever it is that you're doing.
So you mentioned mental conditioning. Is there something that you've studied along the way, or where does that come from? Is that because I find that that's more of a nurture or a nature versus a nurture thing, and I'm just kind of curious where.
My parents are incredible at this. They really guided us well. Their biggest fear was that life was going to kick us in the ass, and their biggest wish for us is that we would be strong and independent and confident. So from the time we were little, we were conditioned to think positively, to, believe in ourselves, to lean in, to try hard, to try again. We weren't really allowed any latitude to whine or complain or quit or not show up. That was not allowed in our family. So I'm really lucky that the little voice in my head, for the most part, is really encouraging. And I have an inner cheerleader. And, the negative side of that voice is also relentless around internal pressure. And so, here I am at 45. I've made millions of dollars. We've got a huge net worth. We made it, right? Like, check the boxes. I've done all these fabulous things. And yet that little voice inside still whips me to death at times to keep the pressure on. Pressure. So I'm not saying that the outcome of, all of that conditioning is necessarily something that makes me feel like I'm thriving all the time. But it certainly helped me be resilient and be bold and believe in myself and bet on myself and stay in the game when it gets hard and make an extra phone call. Now I'm trying to work on things like how to relax.
Yeah. Well,
and how to enjoy.
That was what I was going to ask. I mean, you've got like that much drive eventually turns into burnout for most people. I'm assuming you've probably faced some of that along the way. Like when you hit those walls, what's your response to that? How do you turn the page?
Massive action, just like everything else. I don't want to be grumpy. I don't want to be stressed. My husband said to me once that being one-dimensional is not sexy. And I remember being like, but I do believe in hyper focus and I do believe in obsession if you want to have extraordinary results. But there's a time and a place where you can relax that a lot and you can broaden your horizon and you can become multidimensional. But you got to pay your dues as well. When I was 23 with no college degree, and I don't know anything about the mortgage business, there's only one thing to do, and that's to become completely obsessed about becoming masterful at this job and at this craft and every bit of it: communication, guidelines, technicalities, expectations, understanding the realtor and how they think, feel, behave, act, what their fears are. Like, become obsessed, figure it out, and once you've got it, you've got it. So I first hit burnout in 2018. I had started with Gill Mortgage in 2009, and I started with just me and a backpack. I had no team. I had no processor. I had no LOs. At that time, I was a $40 million a year originator. I was getting business mostly through Streamline Refis. I worked at a bank. I had bank leads. I went door to door and knocked on people's doors to get Streamline Refis. So I was just in the mode of get business anywhere, anytime, anyhow. I wasn't really focused on building something or even really being a business person. I had no concept of what it meant to build a team or to have systems or have time management. I just had no idea of those concepts. They didn't exist to me. So I got started at Guild, found coaching really quickly afterwards. And in the next 8 years, not only did I have 2 daughters, so I birthed 2 babies, nursed them both for 2 years each. I built a custom home from scratch, had a lot of other family drama with step siblings and other stuff that we had to go through. And I built my own personal team and my branches and satellites. And we went from just me, a girl in a backpack, to a $1 billion team with 30 loan officers. So to say that those 8 years were, I can't even say they were a blur because I was fully alive in every minute, but I was full gas, 10,000 RPMs for those 8 years. So the other thing that's important for you to know is that I was part of the core training at the time. And so much of the fuel in that program is about your rankings and your numbers and your money and how much money you made and how you're comparing to the next person.
Yeah.
And so, yes, the number of just sheer hours I was putting out and the amount of pressure I was putting on myself would wear anybody to exhaustion. But that culture that was unrelenting and so focused on external validation left me empty. And so at the end of 2018, I was burnt to a crisp. I almost couldn't feel. I almost was like numb. I got vertigo and I had to like lay flat in a dark room for like 7 days. I never knew if my eyes would start bouncing around. My immune system leading up to that was really weak. Like every month or two, I would get a cold and the cold would last for like 3 weeks. And of course, I didn't know how to rest at all. I would just pump in the Mucinex and the Dayquil and keep hammering through it. I just told myself stories that I had to show up, like people counted on me, people depended on me. And, my ego was probably huge at the time, thinking that nothing could be done without me, which what I've learned today is like, you and I get hit by a bus tomorrow, the world still goes around. We are not that important. Like, people are highly capable. But because I built it all from scratch and I was involved with hiring every single person and building out every single department and coaching every single loan officer, it was in an unhealthy place in terms of all the things that I was involved with. So anyway, that's when I hit burnout. And the massive action was hiring a different coach and working on reclaiming my happiness and my joy again. And part of that was fulfilling a dream and moving abroad. And that's when I moved to Spain a year later in 2020. So all of 2019, I kind of did a reset, if you will. And I stopped being a coach for the core. I started quitting things. I started elevating other people. I started formalizing things. And a lot of that was in preparation for me moving to Spain so that I wasn't physically here going to these board meetings and doing all the things I had done. So it was beautiful. It was a natural progression to make sure that everything was going to be dialed for me to go actually have this dream and live abroad and still run the business, but do far, far, far less than I was doing.
What a really cool story, Shayla. Like,
Thanks.
I love that you recognized what was happening and then not only just started saying no, but like completely removed yourself from the possibility of being able to attend these things that were putting, additional pressure on you. And That's a bold thing to do. I know, I mean, a lot of people wouldn't be willing to go that far. But I think it speaks a lot to just who you are. And clearly it put you in a better place. It's like a great big reset.
Yeah.
And I'm curious when I hear you talk about some of those things, like, because I know you're now coaching other originators and guiding them kind of through what you've been through and helping them avoid some of the traps that you've, fell into along the way. That's one of life's great, advantages, is this wisdom that we gain along our own personal paths. But what are some habits that originators have to unlearn, or what are some of the things that you're seeing that are just, misconceptions or misnomers about the industry that some loan officers just believe blindly and feel they have to do these things?
Well, you don't have to do anything, and you can build this that whatever way you want to build it. And ideally, the business is built and your strategies are put in place based on your unique ability, your strengths, your archetype. This is, my sales archetype on my website helps people like really identify like, who are you? Because I'm not going to coach and tell you to make cold calls if that's not in alignment with what you do. And I'm also not going to tell you to get on social media and start really ramping up your marketing if that's not in alignment with who you are and what your strengths are. So first and foremost, I mean, I used to say before I had a team and before I came to Guild, my husband would say to me, you're doing this wrong. And I remember looking at him like, come on, what do you know? You don't understand this industry. This is just the way it is. But a little part of me deep down knew he was right. I just didn't know any other way. I had no mentor. I had no model to follow. I had no proven framework. I was just doing what I knew how to do, which was just keep running, keep swimming, Nemo, that's what I was doing. So, I forget what your question was now about.
Well, just what do other loan officers have to unlearn? But before we jump into that, I'm curious, like, what does your husband do? What's his background?
So Galen's been self-employed since we got together, and
Okay.
I consider him more courageous than me. He was in a band right when we got married. And so I was like, go to LA, pursue it full out. So he moved down to LA, and his band was called Color Show. You could still look him up on Spotify. He's got a whole album there. And then a month after he moved to LA with his band, I found out I was pregnant. And so that whole season didn't last very long.
Surprise. Yeah.
But he owned a clothing brand called Big Truck for 15 years. He just sunsetted the brand actually this past year, but it made a huge impact in our part of the world. And I was on a call today with a bunch of people, and one of the realtors had a Big Truck hat on. It was really cool. He's now running his own fund and does a really cool options strategy and is trading the market every day.
Wow.
And killing it. And I'm so proud of him. But we're both very entrepreneurial type people, but Galen's definitely one who knows how to enjoy life. Like people would say, oh, I like Shayla. And then they meet Galen, like, oh, Galen, like
Love that guy.
He's got charisma. He's so authentic. He's just so open-hearted. He's just incredible. But, yeah, he's been my biggest cheerleader. And sometimes, our spouses are the ones at home that'll give it to us the hardest.
Yeah. Well, that was the reason I asked the question. Was I think it's important that we stay open to outside influences. I mean, when you mentioned that comment that he made, it made me think of a conversation I had on this show with Andy Zeman about how he looked at his wife's practice as an orthodontist, and that helped him see how he could build sort of an assembly line similar to the way her practice ran, and it would help him, see more people throughout the course of a day if everyone had their own very specific job. And so I was just curious where he was kind of seeing the flaw or the gap in what you were doing, and if it was coming from a very specific experience of his own professionally, or just as an outsider looking in going, man, you're burning the hell out.
Yeah. Well, I would say, you have to be careful with both sides of the coin on that advice, because so many people are open to so much information all over the place. And
True.
The truth is, you need to find someone who has what you want, then do what they do, and you will get what they've got. That's it. It's very activities based. Don't talk, walk. Let me see you walk the walk. And so many people are in today's day and age watching people on social media and thinking, oh, I got to be like them. You don't know what their net paycheck is. You don't know what their bank account balance is. You don't know what their true life balance is or the quality of their marriage. Like, get a sense if there's somebody that you align with, find a way to get in the room with them. Find time to watch and pay attention and not just the 1 second clips on social media, but find a mentor, find people who have what you want. When I met Josh, I was like, boom, he's a technician. I'm a technician. He's pretty dry and to the point. I'm very much very direct. He's a dude, but I have all brothers and a half sister too who's much younger, but I'm a dude's girl. Like, I will just do what he did. And I did. And I didn't look at anybody else for advice. I didn't look at anybody else's business. I just did what he did. And it took me 2 years to completely replicate what he had built. Right. And I think as your life evolves, you find mentors in other areas. You find a spiritual mentor, you find a health wellness mentor, and you figure that out. But our spouses, for sure, we need to be open with, and we need to gain alignment. Like, we need to have a conversation. This is what I want. Here's why I want it. Here's what it can do for our family, but here's what it's going to take.
Right.
Because people often don't talk about what it's actually going to take to get what they want. Right. And is everybody on board for that? Like, and if it's a 2 to 5 year burn, are we as a family on board for that? And when everybody's on board, man, you can do anything. But when you have not gained that alignment and you're trying to keep your spouse in the dark and not make them worry, and they don't understand, the sacrifice and the plan, it's going to be a real hard push, pull, tug situation. And so I have
amazing advice right there.
beauty.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great advice.
Let's go to the LO's unlearning stuff. What I had to unlearn from the core was that it was just about more, that more is better. More calls, more meetings, more. And there was no sense for like why. And ultimately for me, the reason for success is ultimately about freedom and achieving more and more freedom. And there's 4 levels of freedom. There's first money freedom. So you do whatever you takes and you work and you grind and you do it. The first freedom you're going to get is some more money, which will lighten the pressure, lighten the panic, even get to the point where you're, doing nicer things or going nicer places or buying houses or whatever, right? The second freedom that you get once money's less of an issue is relational freedom. And what that means is if you can build your business and generate enough leads and trust in your ability to be a rainmaker, now you can start eliminating relationships that do not fit your mold.
Right.
You don't have to be held hostage by any one teammate, any one leader, or any one referral partner, or any one client. Right. But if you don't have enough money and you don't have enough leads, often you are held hostage. You have to put up with the clients that are really hard on you. The next thing is purpose freedom. And this is getting to do the parts that you love, right? So in the beginning, people are like, well, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. And it's like, I don't know any other way than through. Like, you just got to do what it takes to get there. You've got to learn tax returns. You've got to learn all the things, and you've got to just dive in and figure out a way to love it. But once you generate a real business, you can then say, I want to do this and not that. I don't ever want to talk to a client again. I don't ever want to look at tax returns again. I don't ever want to have to go to a closing table. I don't ever want to have to go to a realtor sales meeting. And you get the freedom to do that. And the last freedom that I'm finding and really playing with and loving is time freedom. And time freedom, to me, it was a hard one to give myself time freedom because I've had the pressure stick going for so long. And I didn't even stop to think about what does that look like. So at first it was like taking the weekends off and getting somebody to cover me on call, right? And then it was being able to take a week off without my phone or my laptop. And then it was like, can I take a month off? And then it's more importantly, can I work 4 days a week? Or can I not respond after 6 p.m.? Like, what are those ways in which I give myself time freedom to do exactly what I want to do? So as loan officers, what we have to unlearn is that being busy to be busy is not where it's at. Chasing the next trend or following too many people or trying to figure out how to be like, 5 of your favorite people. You need to find a mentor, and then you've got to work in your strength. And the truth is there's only 3 parts to a sale, and you can master all 3 of these. You got to get great at booking appointments. Then you got to win the interview. And then you've got to have a next step, always. And once you get good at those 3, you generate enough leads, then you start becoming good as a team builder. You get good at building processes and systems to everything you do. Then you get even better at running a business and leadership, and your career advances.
Well, I wanted to get into the next steps part because you mentioned always having a next step and making sure you're intentional about doing that. But I know a lot of people default to a phrase somewhere in the ballpark of "I'll follow up with you next week" or "let's circle back." All these kind of cliche phrases. But in your estimation, like, what is that actually costing a loan officer who is not being intentional about setting next steps and is really just trying to follow up?
Well, it's costing them frustration and disappointment, and probably feeling insecure because we blame it on ourselves. But the truth is that people want to be guided, and they want clarity on what it is you actually want, and if they can say yes or no to what you want. So when you make a call with somebody, you have to be very clear of, this is my purpose of why I'm calling, and make an ask that they can say yes or no to. A coffee appointment, a Zoom appointment, anything, right? You have to be very clear. When you reached out to me for this podcast, you said, here's who I am, here's who I know, here's what I want to do. Can you do this? Yes or no? And you get a clear response when you approach people this way, right? So people want the clarity. They want to be guided. They don't want fuzzy trying to figure out what's your real intention or motivation. The next thing is guided is, here's the next step. And especially with a client, the next step is boom. Don't feed them the elephant, give them one bite at a time so they always know what the next step is that they need to do, right? Then finally, you have to be clear with your ask and direction, based on everything we just talked about. I think this might be an appropriate next step. Do I have permission to follow up? Or does that make sense to you? Or would you be open-minded to this next step? You gain commitment. That's what sales is. You gain commitments. When you say, I'll follow up, I'll circle back, there was no commitment gained. There was no permission granted. And so then we feel weird that now I have to go back and kind of chase because I didn't really get permission to follow up. I don't really have a next step that's agreed upon. And so, sales is about connection, asking, and making promises. And I don't think loan officers spend enough time asking questions and really, really, really getting to know somebody and their problems and what they really, really want, so that they can offer a very clear solution and ask. Because the solution and ask part is actually pretty easy if you get them to the point of knowing what their problem or the opportunity is. What do they really want? Where have they struggled in the past? What are they after? What are their goals right now? What opportunities are coming across their desk? And here's where I think I can help. And sometimes you can't. Sometimes you meet with people and they're like, what they need and what I do not mesh. And so I do not ask. I do not make promises. I say, nice to meet you. Or I think about, who do they know? Right? Because I look at meetings and sales, especially, that there's never any wasted time, that there's always an opportunity. So even if you and I aren't a fit, even if you have no problems, you have no needs, or what you need doesn't work for me or whatever, that's still not a wasted time. We built connection. Reputationally, I probably put some points on the board because you know me and I know you. And there's always an opportunity. There's somebody there's some network you're connected to. There's something I can learn from you. There's something there if we are really looking for it.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, are you a student of gap selling, challenger sale? Is there a particular sales strategy that you subscribe to, or is it just sort of what you've picked up along the way from mentors and coaches?
I've never read the Challenger Sale, but just off of the title, I understand it. And I think some people, especially if you're an Enneagram 8 and you know your Enneagram style, that's natural for you to just challenge people, right? And go, why would you think that? And that works because it opens curiosity for people, right? And it doesn't have to be so abrasive, But some people are abrasive and it's super effective and it doesn't feel weird to them. Other people are going to go from a really soft side of like, I'm curious. Like, tell me more about that. And then other people are going to be more from a kind of a authoritative, competitive stance or something. It would be like, really, tell me more, right? It's the same kind of thing. It's just personality is going to make it feel differently. So I think it's a really powerful thing because people want to engage, and it's like talking to AI. If AI is constantly saying, "Oh, it's such a great idea. Wow, you're so great."
Man,
It's like,
AI will glaze you up.
you make me want to puke. Like we want to be around people who are thinking and challenging and going, "Hey, great point, but have you ever thought of boom, boom, boom," right? So I've never studied that. What I studied is how to win friends and influence people. And
Gotcha.
the 5 love languages, and that I know about myself that I'm words of affirmation. A lot of salespeople are words of affirmation, and most people don't take time to even smile at each other on the street. So it's really not that hard to win someone over, to stand out, to warm somebody's heart if you actually genuinely care and study and pay attention to another person.
I think a lot of people are just scared to ask, right? I mean, at the end of the day, what you're saying is just ask for the business, take that next step. And I don't know, I feel like a lot of people are just kind of scared to go there. They're afraid someone will say no. And to your point earlier, like a yes or no question gives you clarity on where you stand.
Yeah.
And no is not a bad thing. It's no. So now what, right? So
I just can't stand ambiguity. And I just want marching orders, like I'm a hard worker. So give me something to work on. And so I'm not asking for money out of your pocket. What I'm asking is you putting me to work. Can I use my time, my talent, my resources, my energy to help you? If yes, great. If no, that's okay.
Yeah. So, fun question here, just to transition a little bit. I'm sure by now, most people listening, you are probably familiar with the show Shark Tank. People go on there with their product, they ask for an investment from the sharks, and then if they do a great pitch, someone gives them an investment and they put it back into their business. In your estimation, loan officer goes on Shark Tank with their origination business, they get an investment. What are the 1 or 2 best ways a loan officer could use that investment to get the biggest ROI in their business?
That's cool. I've never thought about this. I think that the wheel turns with 3 things: visibility, credibility, and profitability. So how would you use the money to get the most amount of visibility? Obviously, everybody's going to immediately go to social media and say, oh, well, I could run ads. I could have my face be everywhere. I could get brand recognition, facial recognition, right? So possibly, but I've spent a lot of money on social media and nobody's ever jumped in my boat because of social media, by the way. Like from a sales perspective, that's not the thing.
Yeah.
Events have always been really effective, but the way events are effective is by getting a personal invite. So there's no shortcut to a personal call and a personal invite that people feel seen and special and almost obligated to come. But with more money, you could put on some pretty cool events. You can have some great speakers. You can, be in some cool environments. You can create really memorable moments. I think unique gifts are cool. I've never used that really for business, but I know people have made custom guitars, basketballs, Nike shoes, creative things to stand out to land a meeting. And I know builders is generally a great way to get business through the door. So, potentially going to a builder. Usually what that means is doing your commission on discount. So you can get a lot of at-bats and you can get a lot of volume through the door. But in order to take advantage of incentives or, contribute on incentives, you're now making very low dollars. But let's just say somebody got an investment and they had they had enough money to make their living wage matter. What they're after the first 2 years is 100% building relationships and trust and demonstrating their credibility because they're closing on time, they're communicating, they're making promises, right? That happens by doing the work. And you got to get to work and do the work. teaching classes is a great way to build credibility because you're seen as the authority that of having credibility on a topic. Profitability comes because you have a next step with each individual person, because you meet with a person one-on-one and say, I like you and I want to work with you and I make promises to you. You can count on me. I will give it everything I got. I will be honest. I will have your back. I'm good at this. I want to go to work for you. Give me a chance. You can count on me, right? That's when you actually get the conversion. Spend the money on events, classes, very little on social media so that you can have some pinned posts. You have like a business card and you can then DM people and get them to your events.
Yeah. Well, and the events will create content themselves, right? Just,
Sure.
have somebody pull out their phone and do a quick video and
Yeah,
show
the
who's in the
content just
room and everything like that.
doesn't get it done. I mean, it's being able for people to believe that you are going to give it your all, that you can be trusted, that you've got some sort of special sauce. Maybe it's your nerdy brain, maybe it's your calm demeanor, maybe it's your sparkly personality, maybe it's your aggressiveness and your ability to convert. It's got to be you. There's like the you factor. And then they got to believe that you can help them accomplish their goals, And for a builder, that might look like hiring a social team to get them more traffic, doing events with their models to get realtors through, to get more traffic, to make more sales. So it's fun. I've never thrown money at it. I've only thrown grease, right? Like I've only thrown, human power and time and energy at it.
Well, it's an interesting question, and I enjoy asking it because there is a lot of money in the industry that gets thrown at originators. And so the investment opportunity is there. I just don't know that many use it to invest back into their business in a way that would be strategic for growth. And so it's always interesting the answers I get to that question.
Well, okay. So maybe you're talking about somebody comes on board a guild or they go to lower and you give them a sign-on bonus and it's a couple months of income. Like, let's just talk real about that. First and foremost, a lot of people have not been on a vacation. So number one, you've got to enroll your family, and I'm switching companies. It's going to be hell because I'm going to be like a newbie all over again. And for the first 90 days, it's going to feel uncomfortable for me and I'm going to have to do extra. Right? It's just what it is. But mommy's doing this because I'm setting myself up for the next 10-year journey of my life. I've got the right mentors. I've got the right technology. I've got the right servicing platform. I've got the right products. This is where I need to be to really build what I want to build. And so this next 90 days is going to be hard. So we're going to already book a vacation 4 months in. And I'm going to take a chunk of this money and do something really cool for my family. And it's also going to give me light at the end of the tunnel. My family gets to benefit from it. Yay. I love that. The second thing is invest in people, on your personal team. So depending on where you're at in production, if you're doing 5 loans a month, you're probably right on that verge of not quite being ready to have somebody, but hire somebody. And them taking a little bit longer to get up and running and being super efficient. Well, if you've got this money to invest in your business, another human being that's going to put their livelihood, their character, their energy, their 40 hours a week on your business will absolutely help you grow. So I would invest it there. And then third, I would do events for sure, especially when you're switching companies and you want to tell the story about why and where you're going and your promises that you can make and the products and the bells and whistles and the outreach sequences. Like, you got to tell the story, and you then need to convert those to appointments and one-on-ones and the whole deal.
Love that. Love that. So we're getting here towards the end, Shayla. This is where most guests would say, give us some advice or something like that. And you're more than welcome to do that. But I'm just curious, like, is there a question that no one ever asks you that you wish they would? Because if there is, I want to give you that opportunity to answer that question, whatever it might be.
I think the question that everybody wants to ask and doesn't clearly articulate is, does this get easier? And I will tell you, yes. It was easier for me closing 40 loans a month than it was closing 3. It was easier for me. I now have I think I have 85 loan officers on my team across the nation. it's easier for me today. I'm working 3 days a week versus when there was 4 people on my team. So, and I know that may seem obvious, but the truth is that when you focus on growing something and building something and not just living in reactive mode, you actually do get your freedom. And it does get easier. When you hire your third teammate, your first 2 teammates mostly do all the training. When you hire your first teammate, you do all the training, right? When you hire your 7th teammate, you've got people upon people to do the training, and you get this crowd effect and this collaboration that happens. And it's incredible what happens because you've built something special. You've hired the right people with the right intention. You've built processes. You're proven. People trust you. Like, I don't have to cold call. I could text anybody in my town and get a meeting. Like, it's just not, does that make sense? It's because
Yeah, totally.
you've built the trust, you've built the reputation, you've built the relationships, you've built the systems. But, when you're starting out and it's just total freak out mode, you're like, how do I build that wall? And the truth is, you build it one brick at a time. And so I recently put this all in a path, and I did my talk in Nashville at the Mortgage Rainmakers event we had in April, and was like, main message is this does get easier and you do earn more freedom over time. And there is a proven path so that you can go from one LO, and I don't care how much of a mess or scared or insecure or roller coaster your business is, to the point of being an industry leader and coach and being dialed in. And it's, the path is there, and you can't skip steps. You can't say, I want time freedom when you haven't built
right.
prospecting.
You got to build something valuable first, right?
and have the money. Okay. It just can't go out of order. But what I wish for myself 20 years ago or 15 years ago was that somebody like me, when I was 30, somebody at 45 was like, okay, you don't have any kids yet. You want to be a mom, and you want to build a business, and you want to be a millionaire. Let me show you the path. And you need someone to cry your shoulder on, call and cry. And I get it. And it is hard. But how can you love the game? And how can you stand in your own power? And how can you be the strongest version of you, the biggest version of you? And so that's why I coach. This is why I'm teaching the hacks at 45 that I learned about being multidimensional and being prepared and being, less controlled by this negative voice that says I always have to compete and compare and have pressure. Like, I want to teach the 35-year-olds what took me an extra 10 years that I didn't have in mentorship.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And I love that you're sharing that wisdom and really guiding the future of this industry. Like I mentioned before, there have been several people on this show that have kind of been under your wing, have learned a lot from you, really give you a ton of credit for what they're doing in their business right now. And so you're certainly leaving a mark on the business. And I'm just grateful that you were willing to spend some time with me today and be on the lowdown and chop it up a little bit. So Shayla, for anyone listening, if you don't follow Shayla, I don't know why you don't. If you don't know who she is, I don't know how that's possible, but find her on social. We'll put some links in the comments or the summary of this so that you can look her up. But thank you for being on the show today and just being so open with what you've shared today. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. Go to my website. I've worked really, really hard on building it, making it resourceful, and take that sales archetype. It takes you 4 minutes, and check out your natural, unique style. I have a whole blueprint that gets emailed, and there's income plans and stuff in there that I think will be helpful. So Shayla Gifford.
I've taken it. It's great. So not that it matters what I say, but
it does matter.
It's really great. Appreciate you, Shayla. Thank you very much.
You got it. Thank you.